last day of the 71st IFA Congress at Rio, and we are with the man in the hot seat, OECD Tax Policy Director Pascal Saint-Amans. He was on a couple of sessions. All our readers would have read what he had to say at the Congress here. We will quiz him, grill him on some of the things that he said. Number one, the big headline that you gave, Pascal, is about the digital economy taxation, eyeing a breakthrough sometime spring of 2018, 8-9 months from now. An interim report will be presented by the OECD. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? What will that entail? What are the possible solutions that you are looking at? Everyone would be keen to hear that.
No, I will not be able to say, because it's going to be controversial. There will be no consensus, and unfortunately, I hope there will be consensus, but I fear there will be no consensus, because there is a big divide between the US, the other countries. The US may not be completely isolated, by the way. So what I expect is, one, a description of what has happened over the past 2 years since the delivery of the BEPS package, and this will not be controversial, a description of the unilateral measures which have been taken, and maybe an evaluation, an assessment of these measures, and then the big question mark. Will there be some guidance on the long-term solutions and time schedule to get there? And will there be some form of exploring alternative solutions in between? And I don't know what these alternative solutions could be, but I'm pretty sure that the Europeans may table a proposal. We'll see that. And we'll see that earlier, because in the first week of November, there will be a public consultation in San Francisco where we will have a good sense.
Yeah. Did the individual, did countries individually legislating, digital taxation measures like the DPT in the UK, like India's equalization levy, did that spur you to act quicker?
No. What actually is the trigger is the G20 mandate that Germany as the presidency pushed very hard for. And why did they do so? Because the public pressure, the political pressure is still around, and a number of countries, European countries, France, Italy, Germany, the UK, but also other countries. In Asia, you have Indonesia, you have Malaysia, you have India, which I think is not necessarily done with its equalization tax, which said we are going to act quickly. Better to try to organize that in a multilateral approach than having several unilateral measures which would not be coordinated, which would not be efficient, and which would not bring revenue, and which would be disruptive. So it doesn't sound that good, right?
I'll try again. Alternative options like a turnover tax, I think was mentioned by you during the panel. There is talk of a VAT on online sales, so on and so forth. These are some of the options that could be on the table, Pascal.
I think that a number of countries will make proposals, and indeed we've heard about some ideas: a tax on the turnover, a tax on the deemed use of intellectual property, and all these solutions are outside treaties.
Which one is more forceful right now?
I don't know. I will certainly not tell you that, because I don't know. We'll see whether there will be proposals, and whether we'll see whether there is any chance of agreement on these interim proposals. I tend to think that it's not going to be the case, which may not prevent countries from acting. What matters is that we have a roadmap, and we have also a vision for a long-term solution, which is probably about revising permanent establishment, rules of allocation of profits to permanent establishment, or even transfer pricing rules, and that's 2020 and maybe beyond.
Mm-hmm. You said that any solution is likely to be controversial. Why did you say that?
Well, because the US has already announced that they understand, they are concerned about the challenges of the digitization of the economy, but it's very important not to rush, and they have a good case for that. I mean, we don't know whether the business models are stabilized, so it would be bad to rush for a solution and realize that they don't really work. I'm not sure that the equalization tax in India is a great success in terms of bringing revenue to the government. And does it address the overall issue? We don't want quick, pure political solutions. We want to address the real challenges of the digitization of the economy, and this requires an in-depth understanding of the business models.
Isn't it a bit ironic that Germany, which is championing now this push, is actually also proposing, along with France, a sort of a Google tax very soon? But let's move on to the next question, Pascal, and that is, you mentioned about permanent establishment. You had a senior IRS officer from our country, India, Mr. Akhilesh Ranjan, who's led the BEPS charge for India at the OECD, who's a good friend of yours, and he said that we need a definitional overhaul of the permanent establishment rule, or Article 5 definition P needs an overhaul.
What's striking is that before BEPS, we needed to fix the system and to fix all the abuse. I think it's being done. And Akhilesh Ranjan, who's fantastic, I mean, he was a fantastic delegate of India to the group, and I think he's brought the Indian views and is fully respected by all his partners. So his voice matters. And he recognizes that BEPS has been a game changer. Now, that said, now that we've fixed the double exemption issue, we need to look at the balance between source residents, and countries like India are strong advocates of revisiting that balance and of source taxation. So I think this debate, which has been the elephant in the room for years, because now BEPS has been fixed or is being fixed, or the BEPS package has been delivered, is going to be the debate in the coming years.
But you are looking at a PE definitional overhaul, as Mr. Ranjan.
The answer is no, not yet. What we're working currently is the follow-up of BEPS, which is the allocation of profit to permanent establishment. There is no such a project as revisiting the definition of the permanent establishment, maybe in the context of the digital economy. However, more broadly, there will be, in the couple of years to come, a reflection on what's the sense of direction of the work of Working Party 1, and we'll see whether this debate source residents will take place, and if it takes place, how it will take place, and what are the articles which will be worked out.
Two measures, I think, which I think by consensus have been a big success so far. One, the automatic exchange of information, where you just said over 100 countries have signed up. The CbCR, which many, including your predecessor Jeffrey Owens and several here, have called it a game changer.
Yes, exchange of information, I think, is a game changer overall towards transparency between tax administrations. It's about tax cooperation. It's about having all these tax administrations which were isolated.
How will it change the nature of the game?
It changes the nature of the game because tax administrations are now equipped with information. It levels the playing field between taxpayers and tax administration. Automatic exchange of bank information is the instrument to put an end to bank secrecy. 145 countries involved in this work. But transparency doesn't stop at bank information. You have country by country reporting, you have the automatic exchange of tax rulings, and you have more fundamentally tax administrations cooperating better and more together. We'll have the Forum on Tax Administration. India will be represented. It's a forum which gathers the tax commissioners of more than 50 countries. They talk to each other, they work together, they launch common initiatives, common audits, and common projects. They work together. That's a game changer. Companies are global, taxpayers are global, tax administrations are getting global.
CbCR.
CbCR is also the big game changer if we want to change the practice on transfer pricing. Tax administrations need good, relevant information. The CbCR will provide them with the overall broad picture of the tax planning and the tax structuring of the companies, and this is, I think, a game changer in the conversation between the tax administrations and the taxpayers.
You must be possibly a tad disappointed, was the guess at one of the panels on the public CbCR debate. The promise held out by the OECD in the BEPS Action Plan 13 has been that the CbCR information will be confidential, whereas quite a few, including one of the panelists right now in the panel a few minutes back, said that public CbCR is likely to happen. That's the prediction in a few years' time. So which way is the needle moving, and what's the OECD stand on this extremely sensitive issue?
The OECD stand is we had an agreement in the G20 and at the OECD, which was to go for filing the CbCR in the country of residence, and the country of residence exchanging this information through exchange of information agreements, protecting the confidentiality of the information. And it would be good that this agreement be respected. That said, the European Union has not enacted the directive which would go for some form of publicity, and the directive as it is doesn't go for full publicity, it's just part of it, and you have aggregate information outside Europe. So we are not in a dramatic situation where you would have countries going for full publicity of the full CbCR. What I tend to think is that what matters is that we move now with the agreement of the OECD. Countries are filing the CbCR, must be exchanged. We'll see later on how it works, what type of information is relevant to the public, but that's for a next step, and we shouldn't rush on that one.
It's been like a hurricane transparency, right? the way transparency has ensured that BEPS moves forward, automatic exchange of information moves forward, CbCR moves forward. The world has changed in a big way.
It has, and it was a world made of tax sovereignties which didn't cooperate. They were sovereign by name, not by reality, because if you want to be sovereign in a global world, you need to cooperate, and all this work on exchanging information is about ensuring cooperation, making sure that tax administrations work together. They must do it to better fight evasion and avoidance, but also to provide a better service to global taxpayers, to facilitate cross-border investment so that there is no double taxation, no double exemption.
You spent a better part of your time in one of your panels on explaining the roadmap for BEPS implementation over the next 12-24 months. I think the one line that stood out from what you said was, we will see to it that BEPS is properly and consistently implemented.
We do have 4 minimum standards, and we have peer reviews of the 4 minimum standards. The peer reviews have started.
That's like the stick.
Yes, more than 120 regimes which are potentially harmful are being looked at. We have a peer review on the compliance with the minimum standard fighting treaty shopping. We have a peer review on mutual agreement procedure. We have a peer review on the proper implementation of the CbCR, and we have a monitoring of all the other measures. Action 7 on permanent establishment, Action 8 to 10 on transfer pricing, to ensure that what was decided and endorsed at the political level is properly implemented, because that is the game changer. We don't want reports to be put on the shelves. We want changes in tax administrations and within taxpayers.
With regards to MLI, you gave a concrete example of India-Mauritius. You mentioned that Mauritius has kept India out of the covered tax agreement, possibly because of the principal purpose test, also possibly because Mauritius and India revisited the tax DTA after 10 years last year and finally could manage to arrive at a consensus on capital gains taxation. Now that Mauritius has kept India out, you said that they will not be able to escape the peer review process. So you are looking at the peer review process to keep a close eye on countries which have tried to do a bit of cherry picking.
Of course, it's all about leveling the playing field. It's like the end of bank information. You cannot ask Switzerland to put an end to bank information and having trust secretive information in the Bahamas, or bank information, bank secrecy in Singapore. It's all about leveling the playing field. Mauritius and India, it's an old story. It has improved recently with the protocol. There may be a need to go a step further. We understand that the thing can be negotiated bilaterally at the end of the day, and probably it's a matter of bilateral thing. However, as regards Mauritius, having this PPT with African countries, which is the growing market of Mauritius, is extremely important. They have carved them out, and I think it's not going to be sustainable. The peer review will be a way to ensure that there is no loophole in this new transparent environment that we've built through BEPS.
With regards to the MLI itself, what are the next steps? One big point that Mike Williams also said is that the key highlight is going to be, or the key point to watch out for is going to be domestic ratification in several of these 71 jurisdictions who've signed up to the MLI. What are you watching out for?
Well, we're watching two things. First, many more countries are about to signing the multilateral convention instrument, and this is going to happen before the end of the year. And second, countries...
Century. You're going to hit a century soon.
Well, I think we'll have probably more than 100 quite soon, and these countries need to ratify. So, and that's the main task of the group for the time being.
Perfect. I'll let my colleagues from India, Kuntal from DTS and Amay, ask one question each to you. Kuntal wants to slip one question, and he's also an executive member of IFA.
Pascal, thank you so much, and
My
you have
pleasure.
enjoyed the IFA Congress so much that I can't tell you, as a tax professional who is in the field of international tax, I haven't seen so much of activity, so much of excitement in the recent past, and I think it's an exciting time ahead. Just one concern which I would like to share with you, which I'm sure many of the professionals as well as business community is looking at, is that BEPS implementation, is it going to ensure that there is no double taxation? How do you ensure that it doesn't reach where, it's like you are going to kill the patient rather than trying to find the cure to the disease?
In the BEPS action plan, we had action 14, which was absolutely key. to eliminate double taxation where there is double taxation and tax administrations who are not doing a good job. We have a game changer with Action 14 and the peer review there. So I think this is something which is very important at the end of the day where there is double taxation. But there is another aspect of that which is something we've pushed very hard on the G20 agenda: tax certainty. Tax certainty is not only about eliminating double taxation at the end of the day. Tax certainty is about preventing disputes, is about providing some certainty to taxpayers when they do an investment in a global environment. It's not about the nasty domestic ruling which is secretive, which gives certainty but not the right one. It's about having countries working together through the new cooperative tools which have been put in place to make sure that we assess the level of risks of taxpayers and we leave low-risk taxpayers in peace while focusing the resource on the other. That's the ICAP project, International Compliance Assurance Program, that we are developing. So I think a lot is going to be done in this area, but it could not happen in the pre-BEPS environment. You couldn't convince tax administration to do the cooperative compliance and hence relationship with, a lot of appetite when they knew that they were losing a lot of revenue through legal schemes, but they were losing that revenue.
Just last one point, we have seen in the BEPS action plan, there has been a very active involvement, no doubt, of OECD, UN, and also more important of the administrators, tax administrators. How do you see a role which can be played into this whole formulation through business community or through business advisors like tax professionals to ensure that what result we get or what policy we get is something which is acceptable to all the stakeholders and not only primarily something which is acceptable to the tax administrators? How can it be inclusive from the tax advisors and business community point of view?
2 points. The first point is about making sure that tax advisors advise responsibly their clients so that there is better acceptance. So the old practices of being very aggressive must be over. So it may be a cultural change for part of the industry. The second point, which is much more positive, is contribute to our work. There is not a single OECD document being adopted without public consultation. So we hope that the industry will contribute positively, agreeing with the policy which has been set up and not disputing the fact that governments need to collect the revenue, but within that framework, making sure that we have a good dialogue between tax administrators and tax practitioners.
Quick one-line question, Amay. One line, exactly. And Pascal will give a one-line.
Pascal, there has been a discussion about extending possibly, you have an inclusive framework already which is doing an excellent work. Do you think the scope of the inclusive framework can potentially go beyond income tax? We have a fantastic work produced by OECD on VAT guidelines as well. Do you think all of them potentially can merge under inclusive framework in the years to come?
The inclusive framework is a new way of global governance of international tax matters. It's limited for the time being to BEPS. I say for the time being because we don't know where we will be in 2020. So let's not rush. Let's take some time to make sure that it works. And my bet is that if it works, if it's relevant, if countries show that they can work together, yes, probably it may go beyond the pure BEPS issues, but for the time being, the plate is full. We need to implement 15 measures. We need to do the peer reviews. There is a lot of work to do. So let's not put the carriage before the horses.
Perfect.
And let's make sure that the inclusive framework works, as does the Global Forum on Transparency. 145 members under the control of Monica Bhatia from India, who's doing a tremendous job there.
One-line answer to my last question. Philip Baker, your great friend, who's been at times a critic of the process, but to somewhere he's come around. He said after the MLI was signed, it may signal an end to treaty shopping or give rise to innumerable disputes, which fundamentally undermines confidence in the network of tax treaties. I think the question that everyone has in their mind, are we going to see tax peace?
I think we're moving towards more peace when there is more cooperation. in a globalized environment, you have more ground for disputes. And the world has globalized. It's not because of BEPS, it's because of the globalization of the world. If the PPT is properly implemented, as has been the case in the UK, where you don't have that many disputes, it's not war which is opening. So I think the comments, Philip is very good, he's excellent, and he likes finding the problem. He's right to point to this problem, but he probably overmakes it.
Thanks so much, Pascal,
My
for
pleasure.
taking out the time to talk to Taxsutra. Thank you so much and all the best. That was Pascal Saint-Amans, OECD Tax Policy Director, crystal ball gazing on the BEPS project. Thank you.
Thank you.